Hello everyone, hello and welcome to the BlackShadow here. Hope you keep yourselves fairly well. I do want to welcome you to a short set of videos I'm looking to do here on the channel. We're going to be discussing about some of the meta that has arisen for Dune Imperium, especially now with the Immortality expansion. It's been out for about 6 months or so, and that time obviously we've had to get used to a lot of the changes introduced, obviously with the research and grafting and a much more decentralized gameplay style. We've also had our ranked elo system that has been revived, courtesy of Cheesable. So we see a lot of sort of more competitive play going on. We've had our first competition as well, the Silk Throne tournament currently being organised by Lannister, and the first big open tournament with Ix Immortality is due very, very soon as well. And it seemed like an opportunity to kind of take a step back and kind of look to see where the state of play is at the moment. Cheesable himself has done a couple of videos about this before, talking about the meta, and as such, this is a kind of semi-response to the second video that he posted. There'll be a link of that in the description below, and kindly as well, he's going to allow us to use a couple of excerpts from the video as well, so it's kind of respond to some of the points that he's brought up in that. I want to talk about 3 different things in these sort of sets of videos. The first one we'll be talking about the meta around the Swordmaster. This is, of course, the third agent you can get hold of in the game, in the race towards that. But I also want to look at a couple of the leaders that have been highlighted over the course of the past couple of months, specifically Tessia Vernius and Count Ilban. But we're starting off with talking about the Swordmaster, the rush for it, why it happens, and what maybe players can do about it. Of course, you're interested in this sort of content. We've got plenty of it here on Hidden Assets, not just game commentaries and our competitions, but also videos kind of reviewing the state of play, looking ahead, looking back. We've done essays on like the leader drafts. I'm looking to do a video as well soon talking about what we can expect from the upcoming expansion for Dune Imperium as well. So, of course, you can obviously follow on the channel. We've got a Patreon as well, where you can join to decide the next thing that we cover for our Spy Satellites podcast series that we do, mainly run by CJFM. But let's get ourselves started. So first, let's talk about what actually is going on here. So the idea of the Swordmaster meta, which has kind of developed over time, is the idea of looking to get hold of the Swordmaster, your third agent action, as soon as humanly possible, and using your action economy to affect a lot of impact across the game. Now, the whole principle of this meta is not new at all. People have been rushing Swordmaster pretty much since the day this game came out, but the exact means of it has changed a lot. Back before this game had any expansions, this whole shipping area didn't even remotely exist. You had the Sell Melange space, which was basically you go to here and you transfer X amount of spice for X amount of money. So what the old path used to be was obviously you draw your hand as whoever. If you wanted to get Swordmaster immediately, what you would do is you would go Still Suits to get hold of some water, let's say just any random leader, and then what you'd then do is you'd go hit Great Flat immediately, change your 2 water into 3 spice. What you would then do with this is go to Sell Melange, you would transfer your 3 spice into 8 Solari, and that then would enable you to get hold of your Swordmaster round 2. And assuming that no one went to the Sell Melange space specifically to block you, there was no one anything could do to stop you, and this was, reasonably effective. I'll quickly note here that the Beast itself has a couple of unique lines that he can actually take to getting hold of Swordmaster without any shipping at all. And this has been, again, around since the very first game. And what it generally involves is around a conflict that has Solari, and what you would do as the Beast is you would go Still Suits immediately, and then follow up with an immediate trip to Great Flat. Changing your spice, water into 3 spice, and then what you look to do is pick up some money from the conflict. Some conflicts offer money, some don't. It's completely random. And if I can get hold of a couple of coins, well, then what I can do on the next round is I can hit Conspire, changing the cash out for the size for the cash, which also gives me a couple extra troops back into my garrison, then hitting Swordmaster, and then doing whatever else on the board, probably looking to try to exert some pressure on the second round conflict. So what's happened in the past few months is that players, in an attempt to kind of find a way over like people hogging instead of shipping, which has obviously been a thing since Rise of Ix, have started exploring different routes in order to get hold of their Swordmaster immediately. And a route that has been looked at specifically is going to Smuggling. So you go up, you would take some cash, say as player round 2, and then what you would then do is in your second round is go to Smuggling again, take the bump down, take the cash here, and that gets you the 7 Solari. And as long as you can find a way to get hold of an extra coin, be it like playing like the Beast or Ilban, or you get a discount like, say, Leader Atreides, then you could use that to then, on your second action, second round, get hold of your Swordmaster, and then start looking to do the same thing again. Again, it's a very, very powerful strategy, for sure, and it has been around basically since day one. But of course, the question that should be asked, though, is why is it only becoming a known thing now? Why has it become such a big part of the gameplay? And the reason for that, funnily enough, is because of immortality and the influences that occurs. And it's really strange, because immortality doesn't actually allow any extra ways to get hold of Swordmaster. The ways to do it is either depending if you do or don't have shipping enabled with the rise of its expansion. But what immortality does, it gives you every single reason in the world to do it in the first place. So the whole basic principle of why this rules comes down to 2 words, and that is action economy. And let's look at the reason as to why. So one of the big changes that immortality introduced to the base game, or just not having immortality in any sense, is the experimentation card, and changing this from Dune Desert Planet. Dune Desert Planet was not a very good card at all in your deck, and apart from like in Rise of Ix using to go to shipping early, it didn't really see a lot of use and got revealed a lot. Now, because of the whole research track going on and the benefits that you can exert over here, people want to use their experimentation a lot, because it's something in the agent box, and it's something extra you do. It's why you'll see people a lot more go to Imperial Base and Hagar Base, and these mine spots get hit significantly more than they used to now. And experimentation is obviously a very good enabler of that, but experimentation can also just be used with any kind of shipping. So even just going to smuggling twice with your experimentations means that you're making progress down here, whether you're getting hold of Talaxu cubes to get hold of Talaxu cards, maybe you're making a rush down here to get hold of beetles, look to get this victory point first bonus spice. There's a whole variety of reasons. But the main reason I think that action economy has proved to be really, really strong now is because of grafting. And it kind of goes into the same sort of idea. Grafting is a new mechanic that was introduced with immortality, which gives you the ability to play 2 cards at the same time. Of course, experimentation, for examples, are pretty solid cards, but their actual access is very limited. So, of course, if you could experiment while going to, say, a faction space, that looks pretty good, you know. Maybe send your experimentation down a still suit. You know, it's a pretty decent. It's not the worst spot in the world. It's a little bit slow sometimes, but if you're getting extra action out of that, you know, you're doing the research on the side, it's pretty good. A really good proponent for this is, say, going Wealth. You know, you're getting your money to go to Swordmaster if you haven't already got it already. And while Wealth just for 2 Solari is not that good a spot, really, anything that you can throw on top of that suddenly goes up in value drastically. It's why cards like, say, the Talaxu Surge and hitting Wealth, it goes up in value absolutely crazily compared to just any other random visit. Of course, a third more just general advantage, and it's definitely more relevant towards the combat lead, is the fact that if you've got action economy, everyone, it means that you're the last to put into the conflict. And especially if there's conflicts around which, say, there's some victory points and people are very interested in that, if you're the last person to act, you get to see what the state of play is before you make your action. So, you know, say if I'm here with the Beast, for example, in this situation, like if it's just 2 actions each, I'm having to maybe use my ring my second action, but I don't know, is Helena going to infiltrate Carfax? You could do something else. Maybe Ilban's going to do something else. I don't really know. But suddenly, if I've got my Swordmaster, I don't have to worry about any of that. I'm the one in position, and all of a sudden, now they have to worry. Am I going to use my Signet Ring to go to combat? Am I going to use the Diplomacy to hit Hardy Warriors? Suddenly, they don't know. And being able to put the last into conflict does exert a lot of pressure on players, especially with combat heavies, you know, with Beast, maybe other characters like Romba Verniers. The Baron also can be a decent example of this as well. As people that can exert a lot of pressure, not even being involved in the conflict, it makes people have to expend more resources to kind of guarantee they're going to get the win, and it just passively drains them over the course of time. At the end of the day, it just kind of boils down to action compression as well, something we talk about on the channel. That is just simply getting the absolute maximum of your agents as physically possible. So let's say that I've got my Swordmaster and I draw like this hand here for the Beast. It's okay. Obviously your Diplo, you're going to be able to make some use out of that. Experimentation, maybe pick up some spice. But all things considered, you're not getting the most out of 3 actions. It's kind of all sort of there and you're doing them. But against someone who's got 2 actions but maybe a much more better looking deck, you're not really got that much of an edge. But let's say if I then suddenly increase the value of my cards and all of a sudden there's so much that you'll be able to do here. A little bit of grafting to get further compression in, boundless, there's our ring effect, scientific, getting the access done. What I've deliberately done here is I've made sure that the agent icons and all these cards are exactly the same as the ones above. But all of a sudden you can see how in 3 agents you're getting so much more value out of your turns. Now, of course, you can say, well, Shadow, even if you've got 2 actions, you're getting more value out of your turns. And yes, you're definitely right about that. But of course, if you've only got a 3rd action to run with all these cards, it's exponential. Suddenly, you're getting even more than you would do normally. While obviously some of these have some half-decent reveal effects, Gurney later on, it can be useful. Obviously, the Traxxas research, we've got the research done, it can be decent. If you're getting 3 actions out of all these cards and using basically all of them, you're absolutely laughing. So what we had was a world where it was fairly easy for player 2 to go for Swordmaster immediately and use the advantages action economy in order to exert a lot of pressure on the table. And this also comes out as well out of the Rise of Ix expansion, where a lot of the meta was simply for player 1 to hit fold space immediately, simply to stop player 2 getting to fold space twice and then start to dominate shipping. Because it was a bit harder for other players in order to make the catch up. They could get a lot of advantage on this and use that to get ahead in the game. Of course, whenever there is any kind of action, there's always a reaction, and a player's base trying to work out how in order to counter this. So, Cheesable, as I mentioned, put up a video the other day, basically talking about this and his thoughts on the meta, how it's developed, and ways to counter it. And very kindly, Cheesable's allowed us to use a few clips from that, so we're going to show off bits and pieces and give you my thoughts on his view on the situation.
What has developed, right, is that position 3, right, is finding a way to get Swordmaster, assuming that position 2 goes smuggle. So position 3 cannot get Swordmaster round 2, he tries to get Swordmaster round 3. And he does that by going to the other spot which gives a lot of Solari, which is mainly Conspire. So through whatever the first combat is, let's say this Solari, he goes and picks up water, he collects spice, and later on he conspires while picking up some Solari from here. That gets him to 8 Solari, and then allows him to get Swordmaster in round 3. So one thing to know about position 2 and position 3, right, is that if they don't get it position 2, then they're last in turn order. If you don't get it in round 3, then you're last in turn order from position 3 as well. So this is how I think the meta has been moving.
Now, it is true that if players 2 or 3 don't get hold of their Swordmaster at the earliest chance, that they can be waiting quite a while as the turner order goes around. So you could be, instead of getting it round 2, looking round 5, round 6 maybe. People have got voice, they can make life even further miserable, and that can definitely be very, very complicated. But this whole kind of early Conspire line player 3, I don't think is without some significant risk, which I think should be said. And I'm not going to sit here and say that every player 3 feels like they've now got to go to Steel Suits, Great Flat to get hold of that sort of thing, because I don't think it's anything simple to that. So the first problem you've got is how you're actually going to get to the 8 Solari specifically here. So obviously if you can hit Conspire, that's 5. That's great. And of course, if it's a conflict that has some money, then that's also great, of course. You can do that. But you don't know if that's going to come up. About half the conflicts or so have money in their rewards, and about half of them don't, something like that. So you're basically flipping a coin as to whether this is going to even be enabled. The other issue, of course, is your hand draw. And, in this sort of situation, Helene, this is totally fine. I could definitely just go Steel Suits, go Great Flat, and that sort of thing. But, of course, if you end up, say, not drawing that, and you end up drawing both your faction access cards immediately, oh dear, you've got a problem. How you get to Conspire. So while this can be an option, it is seldom to kind of a lot of variants. There is also other issues as well, is that there may possibly be, it's rare, but there might be situations where player 2 might not even necessarily, if they do it, they might not be able to, they might not take the bump. They're not forced to if it's a leader that doesn't have any extra money. And if they're only going to get up to 7 cash and everybody secure the 8th, they might just bump up twice. And then all of a sudden, that 8th coin you're looking for just simply doesn't exist, and you're back where you started. And you say, well, all right, then I'll just go wealth. But again, you're victim to card draw. And it's going to be probably on a fresh hand, and you may only have 1 access in 10 on 11 cards. And if that's the case, suddenly there's nothing you can really do. Now, obviously, again, this is all probability and randomness. It's about roughly a little better than half chance that you will pull one of your diplomacy cards, but not both in the same hand, or neither for that matter. So the odds are in your favor to be able to make this an option for you, but I don't think everyone should suddenly think that that's the route you should take, and I would definitely exercise some caution there. But, you know, if you can guarantee round 3 Swordmaster, not having to worry necessarily about what player 2's doing, then, you know, knowing that that's stable, round 3 is a good time to get it, it's going to slow down everyone else as well, then, yeah, you should definitely consider it.
So what is happening now, right, is that there's some counterplay from position 1. There are a lot of top players who I think value blocking smuggling round 1. So they do this because smuggling is so good for player 2 if he goes up and down. So by blocking it round 1, right, and getting this slurry, it prevents from player 2 from doing all the broken things. And then I think when we go back and talk about shipping, right, we must understand how the shipping track functions. Shipping track functions, as Seven Spirit says, you know, it is a delayed benefit. So when you go up, you only get 1, but you only get your rewards when you come down. So as such, you actually do want to come down as quickly as possible, because only then you get your rewards.
So this initial smuggle block idea is definitely taking hold, and I 100% agree has definitely some merit. Because of the power of the action economy, if you can't necessarily secure Swordmaster immediately, the next best thing you can do is slow down everyone else getting it. And I've seen this before in competition games as well. In a game I played, I think one on stream, where no one got hold of Swordmaster until like round 4, round 5, because everyone was just blocking each other. And it made it for a very, very slow intro to the game, but it only kept things fairly balanced throughout. So yeah, definitely makes sense. You know, going smuggling first round, if experimentation if possible, gives you the coin, which is obviously going to be good. That is going to help you in the long run. You get your bump as well. And obviously you're going to start making progress on this track here, which you're going to need to do in order to get hold of this victory point here, because this is very, very important. But obviously there is the downside. If you go ahead and take the shipping, what's the odds and when are you going to actually be able to take the bump down to get hold of the rest of the money? Well, the odds are probably it could be quite a while, because whoever takes that smuggling bump has a lot of potential power. Players will just not allow that. And of course, you're first to act this round, but next round, you're last to act. So there's 3 separate players who all could go smuggling to block you, and also just to get themselves going as well. And then the next round, there's 2 people you've got to get through, and maybe by here, you might be looking to get that smuggling bump in. But then it's like round 4, and whatever initial benefit you'd hope to get from it doesn't really exist. So I definitely do understand there is a concern there. I think what has been an other concern of player 1 doing this, though, is you think, well, doesn't it just allow player 2 just to go fold space twice and just start shipping? And you know what? Yes, you are quite correct. Definitely, player 2 does have the option, depending on obviously in the hand draw, which is going to be about half the time, to go fold space, and then next round fold space again and start shipping. And obviously that's going to be useful for them. It gets them getting really heavily for the mid game. But there are a couple of caveats to this. First of all, any time that you've got a player hitting the fold space, this is only a very passive move. By doing this, you're setting yourself up for later on, but in the immediacy, it's doing absolutely nothing for you. So the issue you've got is obviously if people are hitting fold space, then it is actually making the conflict slightly cheaper for everyone else. So if there's victory points online, perhaps, or if it's maybe one of the influence skirmishes, they could look to target that, and we're going to hold rewards a little cheaper because one player is not going to be able to commit properly, especially in round 2 when everyone expects them then to go fold space shipping. You know, in this case, this victory point, like, you almost can guarantee that third place is going to be just the troop, and that's half decent value. And the other issue that is now coming up as well is that it's not so much a game anymore where whoever gets the shipping first, like, dominated for like 3 rounds. Players are finding other ways to get around this and find bumps elsewhere. This could be maybe picking like Lido in like seat 4, for example, or seat 3, and looking to use their ring to chase this up to cut the beast off, especially in seat 4 you see that a bit. I've seen occasion in seat 1 where Leo actually is taken, go smuggling with waiting for player 2 to take the fold space bump, and then looking to then cut them off immediately here within a couple of rounds, and then just kind of cut them out of shipping a lot. It can be pretty effective. Tessie as well, we've been starting to see turn up in like player 4 seat, and of course she has her snooper ability, which allows her to move around her influence as she sees fit, so that can be a very effective and fairly consistent way to get access to shipping early. And yes, yes, I did completely forget what I was looking for there. Professionalism, everyone. So yeah, we're not so much in a round where if player 2 just gets shipping, they just completely dominate it for rounds on end, and use that to just exert pressure everywhere. Players are a little bit more savvy to that now. So yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of value in going for the early smuggle to stop player 2 from getting out of hand. But of course, then the question is, well, what exact value are you getting out of this?
So, what ways are there to play around this? I think the easiest way to play around this is to play Handro. When you play Handro, right, what happens is that you have additional way to come down the shipping track, and that's through Signet Ring. Right, you Signet Ring, you pay 1 spice, you come down, it gets you to 6 Solari. And your last Solari you can get either through wealth or through combat. Ideally through combat.
So I'm definitely in agreement with Hundro's surprising versatility of being in first position. This is something that I first brought up in my tier listing of leaders that I did not too long ago, and I talked about Hundro and the fact that he has the ability to kind of break the queue that can sometimes fall around certain things, and that he can circumvent a lot of that. And there are a lot of good reasons for this. The first off is, of course, when you first get a hold of Hundro, that you get 2 random intrigues dealt to you, and depending on what you find, you'd be surprised the things that he's able to do and just completely upset the turn of the game. You know, obviously guild authorization is a pretty egregious example of the situation, but you know, but now here, for example, in his first action, well, he might not care about giving beast smuggling, because he can literally just go fold space immediately, and then he's gonna be able to start shipping immediately as well, and just rocking and rolling and use that for his advantage. But what is more relevant to this conversation specifically is regarding Hundro's ring. And 100%, this is definitely some truth here to this as well. Hundro has the only way to be able to ship in the first round outside of smuggling. For the first 2 rounds, basically, get any kind of shipping going. And yeah, Couriers is a very, very powerful ability. It's why if there was a Hundro in the game and you're concerned about that, maybe you should consider trying to block him out of going to mining spaces just to blunt this ring. Because at the early game, this is very, very, very strong. And again, the principle here is simple. You know, if you go smuggling here, and then if I just go to wealth and pick up my 2 Solari, well, all of a sudden, unless people just start hammering on the spaces here, nothing stopping me from using my ring, going to one of these, being able to get hold of the cash and Swordmaster, and beat a lot of people to the punch and kind of circumvent that. It can be very, very effective indeed. Now, as mentioned, if you are going to look to go down this strategy, you have got to be careful, because you are definitely very blockable here. You have to find access to one of these 2 spaces within like the first 2 rounds, and if players are attentive, they might block you. And if you've got players that also want spice, be it Lido or Ariana or Romba maybe, so you can get hold of a text here, you might find competition for these very, very fierce, and yeah, that could be a problem. Some players might try and get a bit greedy, waiting to get hold of their ring and to play it as late as possible, and can just get completely caught out, and then you're in absolute jail. But definitely this is an option you should consider, and if you can put pressure on other players to get their Swordmasters as well, might make them have to make moves they don't want to originally make. Yeah, I do think Hundro in first position is a surprisingly decent candidate, and one that should be considered.
So back to the how the meta has developed. Yes, so player 1 goes smuggling first action, and this gets him Swordmaster round 2. So 6 Solari, 2 from here, or maybe 2 from combat. Handro's not the only leader who can do this. I think other leaders like Yuna or Elysia have a shot of doing this as well. Not as reliably as Handro, but I think Handro, Yuna, Elysia, in that order, probably are the ones who are most able to benefit from this smuggling.
I do think there is some value in both Elysia and Unit in first position, but not without their own risks and their own potential issues that can find running into them. Elysia, in my experience, is actually surprisingly decent in first position, and that's because she has the most control over her one-step ahead ability in that first round. This is the ability that lets you, when you go ahead to use a card, you can have put up your second card action immediately, so that you can go ahead and get hold of of a bonus resource from it. If it's only got one Asian icon, it would be a spice. If it's got multiple, you can get hold of the Solari. And there can be some interesting uses for this, especially for lasers are concerned. What you could look to do maybe is look to go smuggling with your first action here, and then say, let's put down our Seek Allies card, and we can just go, I don't know, go Steel Suit something if it's still available there. You know, Wealth, Secrets, Hardy. You know, you are going to be able to use this card because there's only 3 players and there's 4 possible spots. 5 possible spots that you can go. So you can put this down knowing that you're going to be able to send off this card, get your second coin, and then with your second coin, you might be able to decide, say, in the next round, look to go mentat early. If you're going to get a lot of daggers, could be a bit awkward. If the players somehow don't smuggle, well, there you go. Merry Christmas. You have Swordmaster round 2, and that can definitely be handy. It can also be useful as well if, say, in your second round, you want to pull your Signet Ring, and you know you're going to pick this up so you can get hold of extra fold space cards in your deck. These are very, very good for a laser. She needs, the fold spaces are, I think, fairly decent. They give you a lot of flexibility in games where perhaps there's very limited faction access on the Imperium Road. This is a great way to circumvent that and get to places other people are just really struggling to get to. And also, this can go really good with graph cards, which are laser specialty in the Rise of Ix expansion, the Immortality expansion. Say, for example, like Stitched Horror, for example, which, of course, is already an absolutely fantastic card. Well, if you can send this literally anywhere on the board, you're absolutely laughing. And of course, another good example is the Slig Farm, which is another great card for a laser here as well. Of course, the card you graft it to, for every agent icon on it, you're getting hold of a Solari. So suddenly, Slig Farm plus Forward Space turns this into a 7 Solari card, which is absolutely insane. And it offers tons and tons of values. So I think a laser in the early position definitely has some use. I think it takes a bit of practice, though. You've got to get used to her ability and kind of trying to get a feel for what you think is going to happen. You know, don't get too crazy. You know, like I wouldn't be always like doing this and then going like then putting down the dagger expecting to get the bonus spice that I can go here and get hold of memo quarters, because you know, if Beast is here, for example, he might just go for that. And then, of course, this is doing absolutely nothing. And those spare resources at the beginning of the game, very, very important indeed. Princess Yuna, I think, is a very, very special case in the first position and does offer a lot of potential awesomeness, but I think she is very dangerous to use. And if you're going to pick her in first position, you've got to be prepared to have a pretty miserable game sometimes. On the face of it, it sounds good because, of course, every time you take Yuna and you get hold of some money, you get an extra coin. So, of course, if you go ahead and you make that smuggle, you're just immediately getting extra value because instead of getting 1 coin, you're getting 2. And of course, 2 Solari means that you can maybe do some bits and pieces of it. Obviously, if you can stack this up with another Conspire later on, you know, bear in mind with Yuna, if you literally have no money and you smuggle down, not only do you get 2 money from smuggling, you get 6 from the Solari handout. So that's just Swordmaster on its own, which is very, very important. Yuna is also someone that can get some access to places that no one else can at the time. Yuna is one of only 3 people in the game, although I guess 4, technically, if Hundro draws the right intrigue, to get immediate access to the mentat spot. And this can be definitely a nice backup for playing Yuna in first position. If you, say, draw a hand that's looking pretty grim, and you're like, oh dear, what am I going to do with this? You know, because of course your ring at the start of the game does absolutely nothing. What you might end up deciding to do is for smuggling and then go smuggle mentat so that you can draw the extra card. And it also gives you the opportunity to put some pressure on the field of battle, especially if it's gone round to you and no one's put anything in. Well, then all of a sudden you can do this, maybe get hold of a faction access card, or anything really. And then players are like, oh, actually, that's not comfortable. Now suddenly Yuna's in position. And then you can look to target like second place, maybe even a first if a table's not being that particularly vigilant, or kind of everyone's a bit sketchy what else is going on. This can also be a really nice upset as well to players like, say, Ilban. Say it's very common to see like an Ilban in the 4th position look to go Wealth with the intention of hitting mentat, but of course, if you've already gone there, that can be a definite issue to the plans. Because, of course, Ilban wants to just hit mentat as much as humanly possible and just spam the absolute hell out of it. So this can be a way just to kind of put a crimp on that plans and just slow him down a little bit in that initial draw. But of course, there are some heavy downsides to Yuna. As a penalty for getting hold of the extra coins, she of course starts the game with absolutely no water whatsoever, which means that she has even less places that she can actually go on the board in the first place. Specifically, no Hardy Warriors and no Haga Basins. So this can be an issue if you decide, especially to go down the mentat route, is that once you get to your third action, you might not have anywhere to go, because in this situation, like if you take out mentat, the amount of places you can go is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And there's not many places for everyone else to go to. So if you do Wealth Mentat, like, you might not have a city to go to. You might not have Still Suits available to you here, because someone's probably already gone there at this point. Full Space is going to be gone. Players aren't going to let you get the Wealth. Definitely not for that. So that could be a definite issue. The other issue, of course, you've got for Yuna is that if you do, of course, go initially smuggling, you cannot realistically expect anyone's going to let you smuggle again. They would be crazy to let you happen. So you cannot go into a game expecting to hit here again anytime soon. Players can and will block you almost just like as a, we just can't have it, it's too strong. And you know what? They're probably right. There are a couple of very sneaky ways that Yuna can force away the Swordmaster, however. A good one can be actually if Krino Genes exists in the row. This can be awesome because, of course, if you go ahead and smuggle, you get 2 coins. Well, if you manage to get hold of Krino Genes on your initial buy, those 2 star you get for buying it turns into 3 coins. So that gets you to 5, and then all of a sudden, any trip to wealth you can find, boom, you're already there. Swordmaster immediately. And if a table's not paying attention, they might let you get away with that. And not everyone wants to go to wealth either. That's the thing. Like, if you've got hold of this situation, you know, if these are like combat heavy characters, like, you know, Raban, or maybe this is Baron or Tessie, something like that, they just might not want to go to wealth for whatever reason, and they can occasionally just let you get Swordmaster immediately, which can be pretty damn nice. But again, it's a bit out of your control. Yuna is very risky. There are going to be times you're going to be able to profit heavily out of it, and there's the times that you're going to have just a miserable first few rounds. It's going to be very hard to recover. So treat her with exceptional care. There's one more avenue I want to talk about before we end this video, and that is deciding to basically give up the Swordmaster if you don't think you can get there, or if you think you're not necessarily going to need it immediately for whatever reason, and that is deciding that you're going to live off the mentat space. Now, obviously, there is exceptional risk because this is a space that is not exclusive to you by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it does have some potential benefits. On physically hitting the space, it's technically more valuable than the Swordmaster. You're paying less for it, you're still getting the bonus action, but you're also getting the card draw, and that could be kind of useful to you. Maybe you want to look to cycle your deck early in the beginning of the game, so you want to get hold of any cards you buy in the Imperium row, try and draw immediately in round 2. That can be a huge advantage to you, especially if you get like Talaxian Master and get a second round reveal on that. Oh, you're absolutely talking there. Some players are going to be probably more inclined to do this than others. Obviously, we've talked about Ilban and his desire to hit the mentat as much as humanly possible because of his negotiability, which I'll talk about in a future video in this series. We'll talk more about Ilban specifically. But I think actually a decent proponent of this can be Duke Leto as well. He can make good use because, of course, not only is he getting the use out of mentat, which is handy for him, but it's half the cost. It's 1 Solari. So all of a sudden, if you decide to open up with going to wealth here as Duke Leto, you've got 2 mentat trips if you want them. And this can be a nice way of kind of supplementing your action economy without having to get drawn into a Swordmaster race if you don't think you're going to get there for whatever reason. And in this situation, you know, you might not look too bad. You know, go dagger, mentat, maybe go like secrets or something. You know, it's not the most direct entry into the game, but you're kind of stalling everyone else out, and they're kind of having to guess what you're going to do. So that can have some interesting effects here. The only issue, though, with Leto is that, again, you are a bit subject to hand quality. So, for example, in this situation, it actually looks pretty decent. But let's say you don't have your dagger, and let's say that you've got your signet ring instead of your dagger. All of a sudden, this doesn't look too good, of course, because you want to get the spice on this so you can start chasing factions with your diplomacy ability. So using this to go to mentat doesn't feel great anymore, does it? And of course, the other issue you've got to think about is competition for the space itself. As I said, mentat is not exclusive to you. And if you are going to play around the mentat, you've got to be very concerned if anyone's going to start trying to take it away from you. Now, obviously, someone like an Ilban, it might be more obvious to do so because it's a very strong space for him. But let's say if we just switch these 2 positions around and Leto's now in 4th and Ilban's in 3rd. Ooh, you've got some problems here. Okay, I can go wealth here. That sounds really good. I can go get mentat here, draw a card. That's all nice and well and super. but how often are you really going to be able to do this? All right, you might be able to do it this round, and you might be able to do it next round. But if Ilban picks up some cash in this conflict, which is very possible, guess where you're not going anytime soon. Yeah, you've got some problems there. So you've got to be a bit aware of the table state. And this, of course, this is the thing. Belito and Ilban specifically do share quite the relationship with the table, and their byplay to each other is very, very important, I think, for the game, for both of them. So just be aware of that. But definitely, yeah, if you can live off mentat for a little while, and that allows you to kind of not worry about Swordmaster, everyone else is just diving in for it, and you think you can live off this for like 2 or 3 rounds, you might find that pretty useful. Obviously, you've got to be concerned, though, is that once everyone else has got their Swordmasters, they might decide you've had enough use of this, and they might just start blocking you. And, of course, if you then don't have access to Swordmaster yourself, you're about to go into action economy purgatory. So you've got to be really, really careful. Very high risk. When it comes off, it's awesome and lets you feel like you're getting to do a lot more stuff in the beginning game, cycling your deck, getting better cards. You're seeing them more often, feels great, but it is definitely prone to a lot of danger. So that's going to do it all for this video. I hope I've given you guys a bit of a glimpse into the whole idea behind the Swordmaster meta. And again, I tried with these sort of videos that I do. I don't just target these towards players that have played the game an absolute bucket ton. There's a lot of players that are still getting used to the game, trying to find decent strategies, seeing what's working for people, and how they can embed into their own games. I hope that this is an opportunity to, for people that aren't that experienced, to get a feel for what's going on. And hopefully look to improve their games as well. I think that'd be super awesome. As I said, I'm going to be doing 2 more videos in this little mini-series here. I'm going to be looking at the 2 leaders which are being viewed as maybe a little bit overbearing on Ix and Immortality expansions combined, that being Count Ilban and Tesia Vernier. So looking at why that might be, and perhaps more importantly, what can be done to stop that. So thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and we shall see you next time.